All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Truth Seeker with the Truth Seeker Podcast, and today I'm going to be interviewing Calvin Parker of the Pascagoula, the Closest Encounter book that came out, an abduction story experience. And so we're going to be getting into some of the details about this book, his personal stories, encounters, beliefs, what's happened. This happened
October 11th, 1973.
1973. So this book is an exhaustive concordance about his story and just about the whole field of ufology in general. So we're gonna go deep on this one. So Calvin, welcome to the podcast, man. Thank you for spending this time with me.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, this is good stuff. So I've been following your story for some years now. I probably first heard about it in 2010, 2011. Being from Mobile, I'm in. We're down here in the Bible Belt. And so there's not a lot of people coming forward with their UFO stories or anything spiritual or whatever. So looking up some of the ones that kind of happened around my area definitely leads you over to Gulf Breeze and Pensacola area. There's a lot of stories there. But coming a little bit west of Mobile, we have this story here in Pascagoula, Mississippi, which was phenomenal. There was just a bunch of press online. I didn't know there was this much press. Like all of the stuff that's in this book, there's so much in here. I didn't know that there was this much, but it means a lot to me that it's close to home. And I wanted to have you on a podcast. Usually we do a video cast just through the cell phone and things like that. But since you're this close down here, in the Bible Belt, I was like, we got to make this happen in person. So again, thanks for coming
of
home.
The book, it just covers probably half of what's in there. So it's every day we have something that we're going to add to it as an addition to the book.
The book, like I said, it is exhaustive. I knew that there was a bunch of stuff. There was a bunch of interviews, clippings, and stuff like that. But this thing is full of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's and you guys captured all that. I know you worked with Philip Mantle, the publisher, to get this stuff out. And he did a great job as far as finding all the articles and all that stuff.
Job. When we got started, I just kind of wrote my story a little bit. And he would keep me straightened out because I don't have much education, so I wasn't a writer. I didn't want to be a writer. Actually, I didn't want to write the book. So it came around that Philip had contacted me, and it just happened to hit at the right time. My wife and I had went to a wake at a funeral home, and I had signed the register, and there was people coming from everywhere wanting to talk to me, and we felt like that was really disrespectful to talk about this at this lady's this guy's funeral. He was a neighbor of ours. So after the funeral, we was on the way home. My wife said, maybe we should write a book. I thought, no, this fat boy ain't going to write a book because, I don't have the education to. And I had dodged this all these years. From 1973 on, I never talked about this to family, to friends, to no one. So it come after the wake, I got home, and I didn't know more than get home. Then Philip had searched me down, been hunting me for years, wanting to interview me on another subject, because he didn't think I would write a book.
Yeah.
So we talked about it, and he asked me if I would consider it. And, of course, I was going to blow him off. I said, of course I'll consider it. I'll let me find a ghostwriter or something.
Yeah.
But in the back of my mind, I was blowing him off, and I was blowing my wife off. I didn't really want to do a book. So he called back one day, and he said, why didn't you want to write a book? I said, because everybody changes stuff. You give a press release, the time you get the press release out there, it's 100 times more than what it was and all. And I said, I will write a book. I do not want the book edited in no way.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, he agreed. Being a publisher, and a good publisher he is, he did agree not to edit the book. And in ways, that was a mistake for me because I could have let him edit the spelling and all over it, but I didn't. But people love this like it is. They say it's like sitting in the living room listening to you tell the story. So I have a real good working relationship with Philip, and he's become a friend since then. And he dug out all the information. He said, I know this, son, this take 2 or 3 years to do. I said, oh, okay, if I can read it in a week, I can write it in a week. He said, well, I know it's going to take a long time, 2 or 3. We're not in no hurry. Just take your time and do it. So I told my wife, I'm going to my bedroom. I'm going to close the door, and I'll come out when we got a book. Bring me something to drink about once a day and something to eat about every other day. And we got in there, and with Philip's help, he'd kind of guide me a little bit. We did the book. 2 weeks, we was walking out with a book, and by the time I finished that, he had all the information on the inside, all the details, all the facts. He even had a tape from the late Bud Hopkins where I had went down and had him hypnotize me on a different, some missing time.
Yeah.
And that's in the book, and I didn't know I was even hypnotized. It was really shocking.
Wow.
It surprised me.
Wow. I mean, there's a lot just to even unpack with that before we even get into the story, really, as far as, like, how quick you got the book out. I mean, that's a big thing, too. Like, there's a lot of people who they've been through some really traumatic experiences. They have some experiences that can help other people. They want to write a book, but like you said, this was maybe a 3-year venture. You guys knocked it out in 2 weeks.
A couple of weeks.
It's definitely an exhaustive book, and he did all the back end research and collecting all that stuff, right? My goodness,
he's great at it. He's probably one of the best publishers that anybody could get. I know he's the best on this.
Yeah,
and because he is so detailed and he hustles so much, and he does that. He's not just out there for the book. He's a truth hunter.
Yeah, that's
kind
good.
of like you say.
Yeah,
he wants the cold, hard facts, and if they're not there, he won't put them in that book or nothing. So I've enjoyed working with him. I can't wait to go to the UK in August to meet him.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys haven't met in person yet? Wow.
No, we hadn't, but we do a lot of Skyping.
Yeah.
We do a lot of emailing, and so far, if he told me the world's coming to the end tomorrow, I'd go ahead and take my last rites.
Yeah, that's good, man. So as far as just unpacking the story for people who haven't heard of it, some people are unfamiliar with it. It being so big, and especially when it comes to ufology, there's a lot of people who have done their research. You've been doing interviews, and the news has covered you. And I mean, this happened back in the 70s, and we have everything from there. It was in the newspaper, but there's like a resurgence of it now. I mean, I want to, really get into the story, but that was kind of a time where it wasn't accepted to be talking about this kind of stuff, especially in the South, in the Bible Belt, talking about UFOs and aliens and being abducted, and really the stuff of horror movies. Now there's a niche for this where, like, so many people are drawn to it. I want to talk to you. I've got all these questions, but let's just go ahead and unpack the story a little bit, just for those who aren't familiar with your incident.
Okay. Everybody keep in mind that in 1973, there were no cell phones. There was no social media or anything like that. So this happened on October 11th, 73, and it was a beautiful day. It was about 70 degrees outside. So a friend of mine, we had worked together at the F.B. Walker and Son shipyard and got off work. And after we get off, he asked me, he said, "Would you like to go fishing?" I said, "Yeah, anything to kill time." So we went out to a place called the Shaw Peters Shipyard, took our fishing equipment, we parked, and the first thing I noticed when we got there is how trashy everything looked, because this shipyard was abandoned, and there was trash that had washed up on the ground. But living on the coast, you know that the high water brings it in, and it won't take it back out when it leaves. It just stays there. And that's one of the things, and I was thinking to myself, they need to clean this place up. But we was there illegal. They had a trespassing sign up and all. And we parked the car, and he said, well, where we fish is just right down here. They got an old grain elevator, and that grain falls off his boats, and the fish comes up to eat the grain. We usually do really good there. So we walked. It took about 15 minutes to scuffle down to where we were. We sat on the pier, and we cast out. And we didn't no more get cast out. Well, my mind was wandering. I was looking across the river at an old Coast Guard ship or NOAA ship. I can't remember which one. And I was thinking to myself, this thing's made out of steel. How does it float? I couldn't figure out in my life how a bunch of steel could float on water like that. And I noticed coming from behind me was some blue hazy lights, and it was reflecting across the water toward the ship. Well, I was thinking we're trespassing. The laws here, and that was about the color that the lights were on patrol cars back then. So I stood up and turned around and looked, and when I did, it was a real bright light just overtook the hazy blue lights. And I have to say, for an 18-year-old boy back then, I was scared to death. And I kind of glanced off trying to think of somewhere to go, but there was water on the left and water on the right and water in front of me. And I was a good swimmer at the time, but I didn't think I'd survive the debris. So, but by the time I turned around and looked toward the ship, there was 3 robotic-looking creatures coming toward us, and it was too late to run anywhere. Well, about that time, I noticed Charlie had stood up, and he was looking. And they got to us, and I seen 2 of them take hold of Charlie. One of them got a hold of my left arm, and I felt a puncture. And all of a sudden, I got relaxed. I didn't care if I run or not, and I couldn't say nothing. The only thing I could do was sit there and look forward. So I couldn't turn, I couldn't move, and this thing picked us up by the arm and floated us inside the craft, floated us up to the door of the craft. Well, by that time, I couldn't turn around and see if Charlie was around or not, but I could see the craft, and I was wondering where the lights was coming from, so my head was back like that, and I was just rolling my eyeballs, and it was coming out of the paint. It just looked like it was coming straight out of the paint. It was just a real bright light. And I thought, darn, this is something else. And they turned and they walked me and turned right and took me into a little room. And they laid me on about a 45 degree. I don't know if it was a table or what they laid me on. But then something like the size of a deck of cards come out of the ceiling. And it come down about 2 foot, right straight in front of my head. And I could hear it click. Then it went to the side and it clicked. Went to the back and it clicked again. And it did it one more time, then it shot back up into the ceiling. And that's when, I don't know if a more human-looking creature came in. The other one's just an old, ugly-looking, robotic-looking creature. You could tell by their moves that they was following some kind of orders or something. So I figured them to be robots. But this other creature was... I'm guessing a female. I don't know if it was or not, but I just had that feeling, deep feeling that it's probably a female because, of the small features on her, and they're more human looking than the other ones were. So she came out from behind the wall, and she walked up, and her fingers was just like our hands, except her fingers was longer. And she kind of felt around on my cheek. And I still wasn't afraid at that time because of the, I guess, the sedation, the shot that they gave us. Yeah. So she run her fingers down my throat and tried to come up through my nasal cavity. And that hurt like hell. So I just, I was coming out of that thing and I was wanting to get up and run, and I couldn't. And automatically, now her mouth never moved. She had a mouth, but it never moved. But telepathically, I guess, she said, "Don't be afraid. We're not going to harm you." And then that big creature walked over and grabbed me by the arm, and I felt another little puncher. And she kind of backed up out of the way a little bit, and I settled down again. So I really wasn't afraid. But she did a few little things there, such as I felt like she was looking for an implant or had put one in. She looked in my mouth, and my nose and all was bleeding in, where she had done that. And then all of a sudden she backed up out of the way, and that big ugly creature come in and got me and took me back out to the river where he set me and put me out in the same spots. My arms were stretched through the river, and they turned around was leaving when I got to where I could move again, and I heard a voice. Charlie said, Calvin, you okay?" So I turned around and looked, and by that time they had made it back to the ship. The bright lights went off, and this thing just picked straight up off the ground a few feet and just disappeared more or less. It was so fast.
Wow. How long did this whole encounter last, do you think?
You know, it's hard to say. I'm going to say 45 minutes or an hour or something, but it's really hard to say because we was ship fitting back in and slinging a sledgehammer all day. We didn't wear watches because of the shock to the watch.
Yeah.
So we sat there and talked a minute because the danger was over then. So we decided to sit down and talk for a few minutes. And Charlie says, well, we need to let somebody know. I said, no, this didn't happen. We don't need to let anybody know. You're on your own, Charlie. I said, I don't want nobody to know what happened. Because in the 70s, I knew if we was considered crazy, we never would get a job or nothing else.
Yeah.
And all I wanted to do was buy a house, have a family, raise my kids, and, retire at a job somewhere. I didn't have to make much money. So we sat there and talked and decided, well, we both decided then really we shouldn't tell nobody. So by the time we walked back to the car, I noticed the car window on my car had been shattered on the passenger side. And he said, well, we got to tell somebody.
Somebody's got to pay for this.
Yeah, well, he wasn't worried about my car, I don't think. He said, well, we got to tell somebody. I said, Charlie, we don't need to tell a soul. We got in, I tried to crank the car. Now, this car, I bought it in 1973, just 2 months before this. It wouldn't crank. So I kept trying, and finally it got cranked off. And needless to say, when we got in, I headed out. Well, we passed a Magic Mart store. Back then, there weren't cell phones. So we passed a little Magic Mart store that had a phone hanging outside. We stopped, or he said, stop here, and he wouldn't call Keesler Air Force Base. So when he called them, they said, we don't handle UFO abductions anymore. We shut down that unit a long time ago. It's no such thing or something like that. Call your local authorities. So he come back to the car, got another dime, dropped a dime in the payphone, called the sheriff department. So the sheriff department said, well, y'all stay where you are. They figured we was drinking. First thing I heard, Charlie said, well, he said that I asked him, I heard Charlie on the phone. He said, now don't laugh, but I got something to tell you. And the deputy answered the phone, said, well, I'm not going to laugh. What was it? Charlie said, we was just abducted by aliens. Well, he rolled out laughing. Yeah. And I don't blame him. At the time, that was unheard of. So he said, y'all don't move. Stay right there. Don't crank that car for nothing. And we'll be there. Well, they must have had a unit pretty close, and there's one that pulled up. He walked to my side of the car. He looked in the car, said, son, get out of the car. So I got out of the car, and there was one on the other side with Charlie. He said, now, I want you to pull your left leg up, tilt your head back, touch your nose, and jump on one foot. I got to see if you're drinking. I said, man, damn, I can't do that sober, much less drinking, Just go ahead and take me to jail for being drunk. It'll be where I'm going. He said, but I got out and tried it and done his little field sobriety test and all. And he said, you're good to drive. He smelled around, So it was, while they took us, he said, follow me to the sheriff department. So we followed him, and they finished their little alcohol test and all. They determined we wasn't drinking. So they was taking us a little more serious then. Well, they took him into a room and took me into a room. Now, I don't know what happened at Charlie's room because I wasn't there. But they interrogated me. I didn't want to talk about it. So I just kept my mouth shut, and I told them any excuse I could not to talk about it. Then they put us in a room together. And when they did that, that's where the secret tape came from the sheriff department.
Yeah.
So what they call, they left us in this room together, and they had a tape recorder on, and they taped their conversations. Now, I had no clue that this was going on.
Yeah.
When it was. Didn't want to know. I didn't want to tape out there. But anyhow, they come in, they got their little tape out. Now, I didn't see them get the tape because they done sent us to another little place. But apparently they got their little tape out and listened to it. And that's when they called Fred Diamond, the head sheriff. He come over. He said, son, y'all go home. Y'all go on home, get some rest. And I said, Sheriff, I don't want nobody to know. I actually rather nobody not know. I don't want to be classified an idiot. He said, we're not going to tell anybody. We're not in the business of media. We're just in the business of checking the law. He said, but I do want to tell you one thing. If this was a hoax, you're going to jail for a long way. Is there anything you want to tell me? I said, I want to tell you not to turn this loose to the press. We'll go home. So to make a long story short, we got my car. We went back home. Well, when I got home, on the way I told Charlie, I said, it's a good chance that we might have radiation or some kind of bacterial disease or something. And I think we need to go get checked out. Oh, son, don't worry about that. We'll do that later on. I said, well, even when the damn astronauts come in from outer space back in, they quarantined them 7 days.
Yeah.
And I said, what if you give your family and everybody we know? I said, we could start some kind of disease epidemic here. Well, we'll take care of all that tomorrow. I'll take care of that. But I didn't take him at his word. I went on home. I pulled my clothes off, put all my clothes in a bag, put my shoes in the bag, an old paper bag they had. There was a gallon of bleach on the back of the bathtub. And I started at the top of my head, and I poured that bleach down, and I washed myself all the way. Then I took a shower. Then I went on to bed. The next morning, I carried my clothes out to the dumpster and threw them in. So, I was really concerned about all that, and it wasn't for me. It was more or less for the people involved. Well, we didn't know what was going on. The next morning, we got to work. When we got there, I did notice there was a few more cars than what had been there, a lot of more cars that had been there. We brassed in, we went in to our workstations. Well, they sent someone from the office. They said, Calvin, you and Charlie got to get up here. And I was wondering, I bet they found out something. So on the way in, I was literally sick because it released it to the media. I got on my hands and knees in the parking lot and was throwing up because I was just that sick and worried about it. So we got there and they said, I don't know what went on last night, but we can't even get on our phones. We got to shut our operation down simply because the media's calling in. We can't get on the phone. Somebody's got to do something. Y'all going to have to leave so we can conduct business here. They was really nice about it, So the owner of the company was there, and he said, I'm going to call the lawyer that tends to our business, and he can work up a press release. Maybe we can get rid of some of these people. So during that time, they called the lawyer Joe Flamingo in. He worked up a little press release and turned out a press release. But little did I know, it was literally hundreds of reporters there. And this hit the network news. And I still, to this day, don't know how it got released. I got my suspicions, but I don't know how the story got released. So he did a press release. By that time, they decided we might ought to go to the hospital and go to Keesler and get checked for radiation. So one of the deputies from the sheriff's department came down, put us in the car, and they escorted us to Singing River Hospital, where they did a full body exam on us, gave us the go-ahead to be released and go get our radiation check. When we pulled up at Keesler, they drove us to Keesler. Keesler security was at the gate, and then we didn't even have to stop. He just blinked his lights. We went right on through. They took us to a secluded area in the back by an old warehouse. They took us out of the car, and they run, I forget what they told me, magnetometers or something over her body to check for radiation. I had a small trace, but I knew what it was from. I had worked in the oil field before I come, and we used radiation tablets in some of our equipment. And that's where my little bit came from, which wasn't nothing major. And then when we got through, they said, they want to talk to you in the back. So they escorted us down a long hallway. And I thought, gosh, for something not to be released, we still got a heap of stuff going on. So when we got to the back, there was some officials back there from the military, a lot of local officials back there, like mayors, police department, and all that. And they was really nice to us. They sat us down and made us tell our stories. And I figured I better tell them what I could because they was serious about it. Then when they get through, they said, y'all can go. The sheriff department took us back to the shipyard where we was working. And by that time, Dr. James Allen Hynek and Dr. Harder had came down. Well, Hynek was over Project Blue Book when it was going on. And he come on his own penny. He was a truth seeker. So he came down on his own penny to interrogate us and to look at the site. Of course, I'm kind of disappointed the sheriff department didn't ribbon off that site. But they didn't. So Hynek went out to the site, looked at it, and then they met with Charlie and myself. So we told her story again. Dr. Harder tried to hypnotize us, gave us an examination, and checked the puncture marks on our arms again. And he couldn't hypnotize me because, he said it would just be too traumatic. So Dr. Hynek, as an end result, he said in the press release, he said if these guys are actors, he said they should be in Hollywood. He said, there's something happened to them. And that's kind of where they left it. We went back in from there, and I got my car and went on back to Laurel, Mississippi to disappear from the public. But it followed me around. 45 years it's followed me before I got ready to write this book.
Mm-hmm.
And 93, I had something that happened going fishing. I was missing some time, and I had a friend that knew Bud Hopkins that had knew that he had a book out, Missing Time, and he suggested that I go see him and talk to him. So I decided, I said, well, he's in Florida right now. It's just a little 12-hour ride. Let's go. So he went with me, and we went up, and he found Bud Hopkins, and I wouldn't go in. He was at a conference there. I wouldn't go in. And he told Bud, he said, Calvin Parker wants to see you. Well, this was in 93. I was thinking, that man ain't going to know who I am. But he said, tell him to wait, go to my room and wait on me. I want to see him too. So to make a long story short, we went to his room. Bud come to see us, and he asked me if he could hypnotize me. I said, yeah. I said, now don't make me look like an idiot and do like they do on these Vegas shows, put stuff in my head and make me get up and down, jump up and down and all that. I said, as long as it's legitimate, I'll go along with it. And I said, by the way, I told that buddy of mine, I said, there's a ball bat in a car, go get him and knock him in the head with it if he starts doing stupid stuff or trying to put thoughts in my head.
Yeah, suggestive thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything in my head that wasn't there. So apparently he hypnotized me. I didn't realize it. A pretty good long session. And he put a post-hypnotic suggestion in my head that I wouldn't remember this till it was time to remember it. And then I would remember the facts as I could handle them. And he told everybody else not to tell me. This is all on that tape that I got, that Philip Mantle had got. And he got the actual tape from David Jacobs, who had took over some of Bud Hopkins' work. So I went in, was writing a book, and I told my wife when Philip sent the transcripts to me where he had put them in the book, I just kind of started briefing over them. I said, hell, I said, I've been hypnotized and I didn't know it. I went out and told my wife, she was on the back porch. I said, I didn't realize it, but I really was hypnotized. I said, I always thought that was a bunch of bull.
Yeah.
But it's not. So till today, I hadn't read or listened to it. I have a copy of the CD of the original tape, but I hadn't listened to it because I want to remember what came out as I remember it. And one of the things I remembered, I had a interview by Linda Moulton Howe.
Yeah.
And she is an in-depth reporter.
Oh, yeah.
And she brought all this, was bringing some of this stuff out, and I wanted to say, Linda, shut up, I don't want to hear it. But you know, she got it started coming out, and it triggered my memory. And I still hadn't looked at what was on, but I have remembered a lot of what was on there myself, and I don't know how much because I hadn't read all the tapes.
I haven't read them either, so is this more detail about what happened during the, what you would say was about 45-minute experience? Is there some more details that come out? Because you have the transcript in the book as well, right? People can read that.
Exactly right. They
themselves.
Can read it. And, yeah, it's a lot of detail on that. Then it's the fishing trip to Cat Island where I had the missing time.
Yeah. So that experience is in there as well.
That was a little experience in there. It was a little bit in there. But I told my wife I'll be back before dark because after 73, I didn't get on that water at night anymore. Mm. So I said, I'll be back before dark. She fixed me a lunch, and the first thing I remember, I was waiting on the tide to change. This is about 11 o'clock. And I opened my lunch to eat it. And when I come back to, the lunch was still there on the chair. This is 3 in the morning. Mm. So there was a lot of time missing. But, yeah, it captures some of the experience inside that time. I had no idea that I had been revisited then, but I had.
Wow. Was Charlie's experience pretty much similar to yours, or was he experienced something totally different when he was on the ship?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I never talked to Charlie about it. When we got back, when John Howley and Bud Hopkins got through with us, I got in my car and left. I thought Charlie broke the story to the news media, and that made me mad, and I didn't want to talk to him no more, or nobody else. I mean, we had a little bit of contact together, but nothing where we sat down and talked about what happened.
Yeah. So I was following this story, and like I said, about 2010 or so, just finding anything that I could. I looked it up and got, real deep into the story. For some reason, I didn't know that it was two people. For some reason, I maybe just read your account or whatever, or either yours or Charlie's or whatever that was available at the time. And then in 2011, Charlie passed, correct?
Right.
My wife found it in the clipping in the paper and cut it out for me and said, here's that Pascagoula incident. The guy passed away. So I was under the impression that it was only one person for some reason. I don't know. And then recently I seen on the news that they were interviewing you, and I was like, wow, this was two people. So it just brought it back to the light. So one of the reasons why the story carries so much weight is because of the tape that came out at the sheriff's department, was the fact that you guys weren't trying to whisper and trying to get your stories together like most people will, or have like holes in your stories. There was like a cooperation there where you guys wasn't trying to make it up. And quite frankly, you didn't want to even, be there, right?
No, I read the transcripts in the sheriff's department 1 or 2 times, and, I seemed like I made a comment, Charlie, it scared me to death. I felt like I stepped on a rattlesnake. Mm-hmm. And it did. I mean, I was an 18-year-old boy. I wasn't even out to the real world then. And I didn't want nobody to know because I had a future in front of me, I thought. And it completely changed my whole life.
Yeah.
From that very minute on, I would go on a job and you'd have the media look you up. Well, they'd tell you to get them off the job. I was in the oil field, or they was fixing to fire you. Well, the media, once they get on you, They're like a pit bulldog. They don't back off.
Mm.
And my deal with them, they would change the story to make it look like more than what it was.
Are you talking about a horror story?
Yeah.
We was talking about, right?
But how could you change something and get it any more than
Yeah.
what that is?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's enough as it is.
On a fishing trip, get abducted, get a physical, get all kind of stuff. And why change all that? And the reason I didn't talk to Charlie anymore, like I say, I thought he was the one that broke the story. But then later I regretted that. I wish I had it because there's questions I wanted to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
But he took the upper road. He went with the media. He did all the conferences. He wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
And
he got all the money.
yeah, he got everything.
Yeah.
He come to me and said, I'm going to write a book, and if you don't sign off on it, I'm going to write it anyway. I said, I don't care, Charlie. He said, sign it, and I give you 3 or 4% or some little small percentage. I just signed it to get rid of him. But I never seen a penny out of it. Never did want one.
That's usually how that works, yeah.
But come to find out later, the way the story broke, back in the 70s, everybody liked to be nosy and get into everybody's business, so they carried these scanners around. Well, they'd listen in at the fire department, the police department. Well, I wasn't thinking, but the Mississippi Press had an office by the sheriff department, and they had a scanner turned on. They was listening in. Well, they was all on top of it. Before you knew it, it hit the news everywhere. And the next thing I knew, Rolling Stones magazine tried to get a hold of me over there. They said, well, we got some pretty important questions to ask you. Why didn't you call somebody then? I said, well, there wasn't no cell phones in. Didn't want to. He said, well, why wasn't you on camera? I said, idiot, that was 1973. They didn't have cameras back then like they do now. I said, so what else do you want to ask? Well, why didn't the bridge tender see you? I said, well, that's a good question. I asked the sheriff department. They went up there and checked that out. Well, going inside where the bridge tender said, he had a recliner, and his wall was to the back of the recliner. And he was sitting in there asleep, and they would call him on the radio when he needed to do something with the bridge. So, and he admitted it. You know, he didn't have nothing to hide. The man was there for a payday, and he wasn't out looking for nothing else.
Mm-hmm. One of the other factors that comes into the fact that this story carries a little bit of weight is because you guys passed the polygraph test as well. When did that come in? Was that at the sheriff's office that same night?
No, it wasn't at the sheriff's office. It was just shortly after it. And a matter of fact, Charlie took one separate. I took one, then we took one in Chicago, a voice stress test. I did make one talk show with him, and they had a polygraph and a voice stress test in there. Now, the voice stress test we didn't know about, but they put a microphone in there with us, and somehow they read it off your voice. I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
They say it's as accurate or more accurate than a polygraph.
Now, on the job, whenever the press came and all that kind of stuff on the job and was causing problems for them, did you get let go? Did you get fired, or was it just for that day? They sent you home for the day, or did they just terminate you?
No, back in they fired you.
Yeah.
If they would go ahead and leave, it was okay. But if they didn't leave and kept harassing, and these people kept harassing,
yeah,
they'd just say, well, we don't need you no more, go home. Because they'd call the main office and everything, come out to the rig where it was. And the oil field was different back then. I mean, they had some real hard-nosed people working there. They was good people, but something like that, they would take and run with it.
Yeah.
And you'd never hear the end of it. I mean, you don't know the times that I heard Sputnik.
Oh, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff out there when somebody has a type of encounter like that, whether it's an abduction or supernatural experience, and you talked about hearing, telepathy or whatever with the being that was communicating with you, just sending those thoughts to you that everything was okay. Did you ever experience that, feeling of that something was trying to communicate to you or with you? A lot of people talk about it sounds like angelic voices or the voice of God even, or the Holy Spirit. Yeah. As we, relate this stuff back to the religious text and stuff, it talks about the telepathic communication. Have you ever had any of those weird deja vu moments where you're just, cleaning house or something and there's something letting you know what's going on or something like that?
Well, I have had experiences like that, but I try not to, it's pure scary, something getting into your head.
Yeah.
So I tried just to pass it off and not pay attention and shut it out.
Yeah.
And that's how I've done all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, in times, I would welcome it.
Yeah.
But as far as my faith, I believe in God and I always will.
Yeah.
It's one God, one Jesus Christ, and that's just the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's life on other planets. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Look at all the stars, and every one of them stars has a planet around it. Now, I think they travel a little different now than what they did. I think they kind of, I don't know how to say it. Instead of coming in a spacecraft, I think it's another dimension right here around us, and they could travel through like a black hole and come into our dimension when they want to.
Slip in and out, yeah.
Right, and I really believe that.
Now, so that's what you believe that it was? You believe that these were beings from other planets that showed up here?
I do. It was beings from another planet, or at one time I might have called them demons.
Yeah.
Something from hell that might have showed up here.
Yeah.
Because I physically got in a physical confrontation in 93 with one. And, you eventually get tired of being played with. And I think she was trying to put that implant in my nose. And when it did, I was tired of not having the evidence and the proof that I needed to prove it. So I was actually going to grab her around the neck and take her with me. And it turned into a physical situation where me and her both got bloodied up and bloody.
Now, this was from the missing time? You think it was the same being? You think it was the same beings that came back?
I'm almost sure it was. Because when I was in there, that's like Linda Howe said. He said, you said, she's going to kill me. I know her. And I must have known her from 73.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember nothing about this.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they've probably been watching a long time. And I don't know why they chose me. Somebody asked, why you? Well, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Maybe I was just handy. I don't know.
Did you ever watch the Travis Walton movie Fire in the Sky? Did you ever watch that when it came out?
No, I didn't.
I figured that would trigger you, send you right back into heaven.
Well, again, I try not to get nothing in my head that wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now Travis is coming out. I read on Facebook the other day with something else, how that was a near-death experience, or they might have killed him or something.
Well, we were talking about, selling the story. We was talking about that before we went live, and he sold the story, and they turned it into a horror movie. There's other people, James Gilliland from E.T Ranch, and he's talked about how there was all these people who approached them to buy their story, but they know they're going to turn it into somewhat of a horror movie, and for them, it wasn't something that they thought was demonic or evil or whatever the case is. And Travis is kind of taking that approach now that, that whenever he got out of the truck and he went up there to see this orb, he tried to touch it, it lit up and shocked him. And if they just was to leave him there, he probably would have died. That they had to pick him up, put him on the table, and almost do surgery on him so that he would live. And so his whole relationship with that story has changed over the years. Do you feel like that at any way? Is there? I know because what I'm saying, most of this is something traumatic, evil, demonic. These type of words that are being used. Do you think that they have malicious intent? That they were trying to hurt you? I mean, if they wanted to kill you.
I'd be dead if they wanted to kill me. It's kind of like I said one time before. If you look at the different races of the human beings and all, you're going to find good people, you're going to find bad people, and you're going to find really bad people. And some that just tries to get by. And I feel like that this is the way they are. You can make out of it what you want to. It could be good or it could be bad. I think basically they might have been here maybe to try to help us to start with. And they look, because I keep getting in mind that this earth's destroying itself.
Yeah.
And they probably don't need that. We don't need it, and they don't need it. And they would help us if we'd let them.
Do you think that's a thought that's being communicated telepathically? That,
I think so.
Yeah, you need to have compassion for this planet.
Yeah, for this planet right here. And since I've started doing this book, I noticed another thing. I never had pets and never really been around the animals or nothing that much. But my son died in 2012, I think, June or something. And the same day he died, there's a little stray dog come up. And if that dog's not a spitting image, I think it could be a lot that I want it to be. But that dog come to the back porch wanting something to eat. And on my son's birthday, he had puppies. And, it's just a coincidence in there. And he is so loving. He's such a good little old dog. And matter of fact, this morning I had to go down and see him at 3 o'clock in the morning to get him shut. But I feel like he was sent to me for a reason.
Yeah.
Making a long story short.
Yeah.
And I'm real protective of the little dog and animals now, where used to I wasn't.
Yeah.
And
there's like an empathy that was kind of released through the experience. Yeah.
And the average person, the average kid now, they couldn't go out and grow a garden, make it on their own or anything else.
Yeah.
You could throw me outside with a pocket knife and we're going to eat something and have something.
Yeah.
But I think the world just needs to take care of itself. And I think people need to be a little better toward each other.
Yeah.
You got all this cutthroating going on. You got all this politics going on. And everybody down, and all the rich people want to be a politician or have one in their pocket. They need to turn loose of everything. Just be themselves and be good neighbors.
Yeah. It comes back to the simplicities of it, right? And these type of experiences and near-death experiences bring about a similar manifestation. There's the fact that, look, life is short, life is precious. We need to take care of each other, take care of the planet, and things like that. So that's something that the majority of people, talk about after having these encounters. And the reason I'm asking you about the whole evil alien thing, that there's, quotes there, is the fact that a lot of people now, like the whole abduction thing, that was, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s.
Right.
You don't hear that term anymore.
No.
You hear contactee and experiencer. Most people want something like this to happen. They welcome it. Maybe not to the extent of something scary where they're fearing for their life. And
right.
I mean, if anything comes into our realm that looks different, we're going to be scared, right? Those type of things. But what do you think is going on with that as far as the whole abduction thing kind of being phased out and people are welcoming contact and experiences?
Well, I think it's kind of like Philip said, Calvin, you're the last of the breed.
Yeah.
And that means, we was pretty well the last ones.
Phasing out.
Everybody else is pretty much dying off that has to deal with these abductions and all. I believe that they're trying to make a change in people. I really do. You don't never know when their world might need to come exist with our world. I mean, hell, it might as well. We got every other race in the world down here.
Yeah.
Might as well have them.
Yeah.
And I think they are. I really believe from the bottom of my heart they are aliens, walk-in aliens that live among us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that sounds crazy, but in 73 it sounded crazy to get abducted too.
Yeah. As far as the, telepathy and repeat experiences you had to experience in 93, talk about, you kind of feel them trying to contact you or place thoughts in your head, ideas and things like that. Do you feel that if you wanted to, that you can contact them, or have you ever went out under the stars and said, hey, who are you, shaking your fist? Or is there like this contact, like, you know what I'm saying?
I've never really wanted to contact them, But I really feel like if we got off and tried, it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do it or not. Now, many a nights, me and my wife fish a lot at night when it's, a little warmer and all. And we'll go out and sit, and I look up at the sky, see how beautiful it is. And, of course, you're going to see stuff floating around that you don't. For one instant, we was fishing at a power plant, and we was sitting there talking, and I heard a little noise, and we looked, and there was a blimp up above us, and I didn't realize that it was that close, and that was scary. Looked at the bottom of the Goodyear blimp, and it was sitting there looking at you.
Yeah.
So you don't never know what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And something's going to have to happen because the human race is destroying this earth.
Yeah.
We in for hell if we don't.
Man, there's a lot of videos and stories about these ships showing up around nuclear plants and where they were testing different missiles and stuff, and they would disarm the missile. There's video footage, and people can look this up. It's pretty cool. But several years back, there was an asteroid headed. I believe it was in Germany, I believe. But the asteroid was coming, and it was about to make land impact. And then at the last minute, a ship appeared, shot a beam at it, and exploded to where it was just all these little bitty pieces of debris. I don't know if you remember that, but it's
heard about
somebody or something, God, Jesus, the angels, whatever, they're watching over us, and they are trying to protect us. Hopefully we don't take ourselves out, those type of things, right?
Yeah. I know God's watching me, and I often thought, and Linda Howe brought up an idea why it possibly could have been. Daddy worked for the Atomic Energy Commission in Las Vegas out in Area 51 back in the 60s, and they was exploding these nuclear bombs underground because that was when the Cold War was going on. So they was doing everything they can to build these weapons that would just wipe other countries off the planet. And, it could have been something from that might have triggered them to start getting a hold of me.
It could have been. A lot of this stuff is, generational. There's a lot of people who have, your parents had a fear or a phobia of this stuff because they've had dreams and nightmares and things that's happened, loss of time and stuff like that. Has your children ever experienced anything? Do you think it's passed down? Nobody's ever said anything?
Not that I know of. My daughter, she's the type that if she would, I don't believe she would tell anybody.
Yeah.
She'd be like me. As far as I know, she hadn't.
Yeah. Another question I got for you about just the area itself right here, Pascagoula, Mississippi, just the Gulf Coast right here, really. Is there something special about it? Because this story means a little bit more to me, too, because when I got into ufology and spirituality or whatever, I tried to go out and make contact. I would read the Bible, read that the angels were traveling back and forth from heaven to earth, and I have a prayer life, and I'm asking God to let me see one. If the Bible's true, if they travel back and forth, can I see one? And I started seeing lights that would fly by and stop on a dime and blink and say hello and then fly another direction. Really interesting stuff. And so I worked delivering car parts, and I got out really early to jump in my truck from Saraland, Mobile, Alabama, and I would head out on my route. And I would come across the Pascagoula Bridge here, and I would stop at the rest area. We're just a couple miles, if that, from it. I would stop at the rest area. I would try to get there as early as I could, and many mornings I'd get there at 4 a.m. And I'd get out and I'd walk in the woods, and I'd position my truck in a way that it would block out any light that was coming in. And I try to communicate telepathically, and I would see stuff here. I would see stuff, and it's really close to where this whole thing happened with you. I would see things that looked like blimps, but you can see through them. They were transparent things. I'd see things flying that looked like stingrays flying in the air, but you could see through them, and it was just really weird aerial phenomena that let me know that something's up. I can't tell you exactly what those things were or what, but something's going on, and it just light something in you, right?
I'm glad you asked that question. Pascagoula is a special place to me since that. I've always come back here. I always ended up back here. Something's pulling me in this direction. And I think there's something major, and I don't know what it is. And but I just feel the need to be here in Pascagoula and to be with the people that I'm around. I love the people here in Jackson County and Pascagoula on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and I want to do everything I can for them. But I think it's kind of like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think it's something fixing to bust wide open real soon around here. Now, what it is, I don't know if it is anything. Unlike a lot of people, they'll predict something big's going to happen, and it don't never happen. Yeah. Well, I'm not predicting nothing. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Well, you just turn on your TV, you could see that it's already here, almost, as far as everything going on.
Something special is going to happen right here. And I believe there's a reason for trying to put this tiny town on the map again. And we've had deals, a lot of good deals offered, and people wanting to write screenplays and stuff, and we hadn't accepted anything real good right now. But when they send that screenplay, if it's not the truth and not going down, and if it's not helping Jackson County and Pascagoula, I won't have nothing to do with it.
Well, that's what you was talking about, the screenplay, but also the book, like you mentioned, there's the fact that with you agreeing to do this book, you didn't want nobody messing with your story. Hey, let's spice it up a little bit. Say they did this to you. Say they did that. And you wanted to have total control over it. And so you working with Philip, he agreed to do that. Like you said, not being someone who, has, this great education, but it's legit because it's your story.
Right.
And it hasn't been tampered with.
And I have to give Philip credit. I know he wanted to go in and do a little editing on it. But he didn't do it because he gave his word. He's took a lot of criticism, or not a lot, but some criticism.
It's there, yeah.
And, I'll go back and tell him, look, I don't care what you say about him. He's a good man. He didn't edit the book because I didn't want it edited, and he agreed not to do that. So that's me and Philip. And you don't know how much I appreciate him for what he's done.
Yeah.
Philip has been a real inspiration for me. He's brought me, more or less say, out of the closet. He's got me talking about this. Mm-hmm. But I think it's time to talk about all this.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at the people that get in touch with me that's got questions every day on Facebook or some kind of social media. Well, I got an experience I want to talk to you about. Well, I take time and I talk to them. What else have I got but time?
Well, I mean, when you was going through that, wouldn't it have been great if you said, hey, there's a guy who had an exact encounter or something very similar. I'm going to call this guy.
Yeah.
But there was, we're down here in the Bible Belt. There's nobody here. And if we went to California or Denver, Colorado, they're everywhere, right? It's accepted.
There's one person that I talked to that did help me back when this happened was Betty Hill.
Okay.
I went and spent 3 or 4 days with Betty Hill. And in the back of my mind, why would I listen to Betty Hill when I was going down there on the plane ride? I said, you know what? She did something that nobody would do. She was married to a black man, and you didn't do that back in. And she can get out and tell her story and take the ridicule that come on for being in a mixed marriage.
Yeah.
She's telling the truth. And after I met the lady, she was so sweet. And she took me up in the mountains where they had their experience and tried to show me things. We never seen nothing, but, she was sincere and genuine at heart. And I believe her from the bottom of my heart. I also seen the star map she had, and I don't know if anything ever came out of it or not.
Yeah. So what about your ridicule? Like I said, coming out with this stuff in, I keep saying the Bible Belt, I've faced, some ridicule as well, but this is in the 70s as well, So what about you? Were there naysayers? Were there people, hey, stay away from this guy, he's a loony making it up? And I know you didn't want the fame, you didn't even want to talk about it. So what was some of the stuff that just came with it?
Well, people pretty well left me alone because I didn't want to talk. I didn't hit the publicity.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then you find somebody, what was you drinking? What was you smoking?
I want what you have.
Yeah, I want what you got.
Smoking, yeah.
But pretty much, basically, people left me alone. And the reason for that, I think I just kept quiet and kept to myself and my family. And I believe it was something in the future that was coming out. And I was kind of protected from all this. So, I've been lucky through
That's good because you have a lot of people who, they grow bitter from that stuff. They have a beautiful encounter, or even a scary encounter. It's their story, right?
Right.
But because of all the ridicule and the mockery and the disinfo, they grow bitter with their age, and that's definitely hasn't happened, to you. So that's a plus, right?
Oh yeah, and since the books came out, I've had book signings. One right here in Pascagoula, or two right here, and got to meet some people, and that was said that my mom and daddy seen this, and they told me about it. Or I was 12 years old and I seen it, and we know it happened, or we believe you, and that makes you feel good to get to know these people. And there wasn't nothing bad. Nobody from one of these book signings ever said anything bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they spend good money, come here and bought a book and to get it autographed just to meet me. That makes me feel good inside. Makes me feel like I'm honored.
So are you having a decent turnout from that, especially being, again, here in the South? Is it a growing number of people who are asking these bigger questions and things, who want to show up for that?
It's hundreds of people.
Wow, yeah.
And we'll come in and they'll organize the book signing. We'll come in, just sit down and sign a few books, do a few autographs. Somebody said, well, you're in it for the money. I said, I don't make nothing off of it. To the book signings and things like that, I'm going to donate my time to be sure that Pascagoula gets the people in here that it needs, because there's something big going on, and I need to feel like they would. Now I make a few dollars, selling the books that comes from Amazon.
Yeah.
But, I donate my own time to come up because I enjoy it. I want to be with these people. I love these people. They're my neighbors. They're my friends. And a person has very few true friends in his life, and you better take advantage of them.
I'm with you on that.
Yes, sir.
John, do we have any questions from the internet?
Yeah, we do.
What do we have here?
Scroll.
You just want me to scroll and read some of these? Any of them stand out for you?
Yeah, Chris Garner.
Chris Garner. Let's see if we can check out some of these comments here. Chris Garner says, has your perception of the encounter become more positive over time, similar to Travis Walton telling a more positive message years later?
Well, I can't really say it's positive or non-positive. Jury's still out.
Well, like I said as well, like it's birthed something in you that you're more compassionate. You could have died, right? These type of things, and it makes you not take life for granted.
Right. You take every day as you live it. You be the best you can. And I'm a firm believer in karma. Mm-hmm. You can bring the karma on yourself, either good or bad. And I don't want no bad karma. I had enough problems in my life.
Yeah, trying to undo some of that stuff, John, what about you, man? Do you have any questions? I know you're big into ufology and you're well studied as well.
I guess my only question would be, I've had experiences back when I was younger, back in Puerto Rico, where I've seen an actual being, but my being was different.
Right.
My being was, it looked humanoid. It had legs, arms, and torso and a head, but no actual features, no eyeballs, no mouth, nothing. But it was like what you would typically see little green man. I saw a grown man, glowing green.
In the book, I always say on the robotic creatures that come after me, Charlie's seen facial features and all on them, but I didn't see none on them. But if you get down, just take our society, you got all these different races, all these different people. Nobody really looks the same or acts the same, and it's different races and all. And I feel like it's the same way with them. If they're here and they are from another planet, God had to invent them, and He might have invented them in different images, or maybe it's some angels that broke loose, and it's just really hard to say. But I think time is due to tell.
Yeah, some of the if you read the scriptures, you see where people had these encounters with angels. They fell to their knees in fear.
Right.
Like there's this, these type of scary looking creatures, or whatever the case is. Beasts, they even call them.
Exactly right. So every race is different. Every person's different. I don't know of too many people that look the same. on the earth, but it is a few.
Yeah, these creatures you guys outline in here, they look different. You don't really see. I mean, you see this little guy here. For those listening on the podcast, then it's this little alien gray type being, and you see these guys a lot or whatever. So when it comes to these different humanoid type of beings that looked different, like there was like points on their heads, and they just looked, really different. So
well, look at the different breeds of dogs that you have, the different breeds of cattle that you have. All them's different, you know. And I feel like, and like I say, you have good in everybody, you have bad in everybody. Now, I want to consider myself good. Mess with my family or my friends, I can be bad and have been. And I'm not the easiest person in the world to live with. Or I got the biggest heart in the world. I'd get somebody's shirt off my back if they needed it. So that's just life, though.
Yeah, that's one thing that really came across to me was the fact that, like I said, I mentioned James Gilliland. A lot of his stuff, helped me early on when I was having my encounters. But he talked about just like you have racism, and it offends them if you have a type of entity that looks different or kind of scary, not to, be shocked or not to be afraid. And, because it is like there's like a prejudice or whatever, or how does it make that entity, that angel, that alien, from another planet feel the fact that you just think they look grotesque and and so it's the same type of deal when we're dealing with humans as well,
maybe you don't want to hug their neck, but you can shake their hand. I know down here in the South, these book signings and stuff, I'll tell most of these people, well, we from the South, we hug. Mm-hmm. So,
if somebody wants to pick up a copy of the book, man, where's the best place to go to get one of those?
Amazon. Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, Calvin Parker.
Calvin Parker. Yeah, I believe you can just go there, type your name, and it'll come right up.
Oh, it comes up. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for doing this podcast with me. I really enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it.
Pleasure to finally meet you as well, and your story here, and many blessings moving forward with it and getting that message across.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it, and thank y'all for listening in.
Yeah, thank everybody for hanging out with us, and with that, we'll say peace and shalom and blessings, everyone. Thank you and God bless. If you're a fan of ufology and want to hear more interesting interviews with UFO experiencers and even how it relates to spirituality, check out my podcast, The Truth Seeker Podcast, on any podcasting platform. There you'll find me. Huge shout out to Jonathan Santiago, who traveled a long way to make this happen. Thank you so much for coming down, brother. Check out his podcast too at John Santiago Raw.